What's up guys? In today's video, we're gonna be reacting to a fellow YouTuber, Shelby Church. So if you're not familiar with who Shelby Church is, she is another person on YouTube that is much bigger than me, much bigger audience. And she recently has been doing some cool stuff in the Airbnb space. But her first Airbnb project didn't really quite go to plan. She just released a video about a month ago on her channel detailing the first Airbnb that she purchased in Palm Springs, California. And that property lost money, so she did a recap, kind of breakdown of that. And there's been a lot of talk recently about people losing money on short-term rental and Airbnb properties. So I wanted to do a reaction video, just kind of going through and seeing what went well, what went poorly, and mistakes that were made along the way, as well as what I think you as a potential investor in short-term rentals could learn from this whole process. So I'm gonna be reacting to this and sharing my thoughts as someone who's been in the Airbnb space for years and years now, and has multiple properties. I wanna give my reaction and my feedback, my thoughts on this video. So let's go ahead and let's jump right in.
2 years ago, I bought a house in Palm Springs and renovated it, and last January, I put it on Airbnb.
When the house was finally ready, I was so excited to see how it would do on Airbnb. And it was a little slow at first, but come spring, things were really heating up, and we were making a lot of money. Finally, all the work seemed worth it, and it was kind of like magic how it was truly passive income.
So right off the bat, I'll say like Palm Springs, and I already knew this going into it, but Palm Springs is a market that has gotten really saturated over the last couple of years. A lot of opportunistic investors were jumping in on it. And I will say a couple of things so far about the video. Like, I will say the one kind of gripe I have is when people talk about Airbnb or short-term rental being truly passive. Alex Hormozi actually put out a really good video about this recently where he talks about how investing in anything, it's not passive or active. It's really a continuum. It's a spectrum, right? So on the far end, like one of the most passive investments you can make would be into an index fund. But to do that, you still have to open a brokerage account. You still have to go and research different funds. You still have to decide which one to do and then actually put the money in there, put the money into it. And on the most active side would be like your job where you're, literally doing active, or your business, that kind of stuff. And so there's this huge spectrum, and real estate is way more passive than building a business, but way more active than investing in an index fund. And even if you do get it to the point where it's like truly passive, you're still gonna have things come up. You still have to pay your bills. You have to spend time doing that. You still had to spend time initially early on finding the deal, renovating it, all that stuff. So I just want to clarify, like anytime that people talk about Airbnbs or real estate investing as being truly passive income, I see a bit of a flag there because it is passive, but I just don't want people to get the wrong idea and think that it's like, sitting on a beach, sipping a margarita while the money rolls into your bank account. It certainly is not that. That's not what she was getting at. That was just more just a thought that I had that I just want to clarify for a lot of people, because I think a lot of people watching these videos are watching it thinking, okay, well, I can invest myself and have it be this like passive income stream, and just realize that there is activity involved in it. It's not something for nothing.
Summer hit though, it was looking very different. And I've shared our best month, but I haven't shared the full story yet.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, you guys. We lost money. It's not looking good. But I will go into detail into why and really the things I've learned and what you should know if you're ever thinking of doing an Airbnb.
Okay, so let's take a look at what the summer was like. Let's start with how much we actually made. Going into the summer, the bank account balance for the house was $25,000.
This is actually a really good note. I think a lot of people, it's good that she included this because a lot of people don't think about this one little thing. It's a small note that she made about it, but a lot of people don't even consider the fact that when they buy a property, they need to hold some money in an account for like a maintenance reserve, just in case anything goes wrong. You don't want to have your bank balance be zero. So just make sure that when you're looking at buying a property, you're accounting for the down payment and the closing costs and the renovation costs, but also money that you want to have sitting in cash in your bank account ready in case it's ever needed. So just make sure you factor that in when you're looking at investing and calculating how much cash you'll need.
So I'm just gonna be talking about what we made over the summer. If you wanna know what we made in the spring, which is really the high season of Airbnb in Palm Springs, you can go watch this video. I'll put it in the description. That is where you're gonna see like the good months where you make a lot, and exactly how much it all breaks down to. So go check that out. So we were doing really well in the spring, and then summer hit. Let's start with June. So June, we had 2 bookings, and the nightly rate was not that high. I think it was like $400 or $500 a night. The total amount paid was $5,450. After all the fees, the property management fee and everything, we got $4,106 for June. So
right off the bat, I think there's a couple of things. One is when Shelby's talking about like low season, and then the spring came, then the summer came. You really should expect that. When you're investing in an Airbnb or a short-term rental, it's going to be a lot more seasonal than a long-term rental. A long-term rental, the nature of it is you get the same exact amount every single month, and it's either 1 or 0. Either you're getting money or you don't have someone in there and you're not. And with Airbnb or short-term rental, there's a lot more fluctuation. And so a lot of people shy away from investing in short-term rentals because they know about that fluctuation and they see it as unpredictable or volatile. And in reality, it's not unpredictable. The fluctuations are highly predictable if you use tools like AirDNA and you do proper analysis, which it sounds like Shelby probably didn't. And so if you do that proper analysis ahead of time, then you can predict this and you can know what to expect. And then the other thing I wonder about is like, how many nights was it booked? Because she mentioned here that it was booked for only 2 bookings, but I don't know how many nights those were. So if each one of those was like 2 weeks long and the whole month was booked out, but it sounds like it was probably only more like 4 or 5 days each one. And so if it really just depends on what the target is, that may or may not be good for the area. I don't know what the occupancy rate target is for the area in that month, but it really depends. Like in some markets, you're aiming for a 50% occupancy in the low months of the year, and that's good. That's what to expect. And you make your money in the high season, and that's really predictable, and that's like totally good. So it might not be a bad thing, or it might be a bad thing. It might just be that she overpriced the property. It's a little bit hard to tell.
honestly, that's kind of a break-even month. It's not too bad for the summer. That's kind of what I was expecting. Okay, July. We had 1 renter. 1. I changed the names of these renters, by the way, to protect their privacy, but these are fake names. Karen, Patty, Molly, all that, totally fake names. So we had 1 renter, only 3 nights were booked out. So they paid $1,500. We got $1,106. Obviously, this is not enough to cover any of the expenses. Like, it's not even enough to cover the utilities, probably. And I will say we probably could have lowered our nightly rate more. However, our electricity bill gets so high in the summer that you would almost maybe lose money by hosting people if you make your nightly rate too low. August.
Yeah, so that is a really that's a big challenge for people, is that they think about it the wrong way. And so in this example, it probably wasn't just the nightly rate that needed adjusting. Probably lots of things that you could do to get more bookings in for that month, but also like realistically, what is the additional expense? Because I know that there's a pool at this property, so maybe it's that she's not charging extra for the pool heating. In that case, yeah, the hydro would be really expensive, and so it wouldn't make sense. But like air conditioning or heating for the property probably isn't that expensive that it would cost like, more than $400 a night, because this person's paying $500 a night for their 3-night booking. It's probably not costing $500 a day to heat the property. If it is, that's crazy. But really, you could probably lower your price down a whole lot more and get additional bookings in there. And then the other thing is that if you keep the calendar consistently booked and you keep on getting bookings in, you keep getting more reviews, and then it compounds on itself and you perform a lot better long term. So yeah, definitely flawed thinking there. You definitely should not be as low in occupancy as like 3 nights booked out of the entire month. That's super, super low. So there's definitely a lot of money being left on the table there.
We had 1 renter. They rented for 3 nights. They paid $1,221. We had some expenses that we had to pay for. We had a few things we had to pay someone to come fix within the house. That was $400. So we only got $562 for this month. Okay, we had 1 guest for September. 3 nights, they paid $1,500, we got $1,184. So our total revenue before any of the expenses over the summer was $6,970. Not nearly, like, We literally made like almost triple that in 1 month in the spring. So it's crazy. I knew the summer would be slow. I didn't know it would be that slow. So now let's get.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Is like you really need to do an in-depth analysis and lots of due diligence to really know exactly what to expect so that you can plan for it and so that you can determine if it's actually a good investment or not. Because if you weren't expecting it to be this low and then it's way lower than you anticipated, well, then your return is way lower than you anticipated. So suddenly your cash flow might be wiped away for the property and then you just put a whole bunch of work in for nothing because it was a bad investment. So definitely need to do your due diligence better there and just like do the research. That's just something you need to do on any investment where you're putting a bunch of money into it. And then the other piece is just like there's definitely some things going on there where I think you could improve either the listing or the pricing strategy, do things to just improve the overall performance of the property so that it's not doing quite as poorly as it did in those months.
Now let's get into the expenses because this is where it gets bad. So here's a look at the overall expenses. For the most part, it's about the same every month. It really only fluctuates on the utilities, mainly on the electricity, because the electricity bill can get very high in the summer.
Yeah, see, look at that. Like that's an $800, like at the peak of it, it's an $800 electricity bill. That works out to like, what does that work out to per day? It's not like, you could lower your prices down to $200 a night for this place and still be making good money on it. Like the electricity bill is high, yeah, for sure, but it's not insane. And there's probably things you can do, like renovations you can make. I don't know what is leading to that high electricity bill, what the deal is there, but you could probably do some things to make that more efficient. But yeah, I think it's flawed to think that that you shouldn't lower your price below $500 a night or $400 a night because it's going to cost you too much to have those guests. That's just not the case.
And the gas bill can get really high in the winter, but luckily our gas bill is pretty low right now. So we can see the mortgage is the same every month. It's $3,000, and that includes the property taxes, homeowner's insurance, principal, and interest. SCE is our electricity bill, and as you can see, it was really high in June and July. And what I realized is the thermostat was being left on all the time, set at 86 degrees.
Yeah, that's a huge mistake. I actually had that happen recently. We didn't have it this bad. We had a $300 hydro bill because my Nest thermostat wasn't set up properly. But what you definitely want to do with your short-term rental is get a smart thermostat, like a Nest. I really like the Nest one. You can control it remotely from your phone. What I like to do is set it so that there's like a home and away setting so that when it detects that no one's in the property, it'll automatically lower down the temperature. Well, I mean, if it's in the winter time, it'll lower it down so it's not heating it as high, and in the summertime you can set it so that it raises it up and it's not cooling it down as low. So that's super helpful. And then what you can also do is set schedules so that in the morning it automatically adjusts to this temperature, at the night it automatically adjusts to this temperature. What's really great about that is that then when a guest changes it and cranks the heat or cranks the AC, it'll automatically adjust back to something within reason like 12 hours later. So yeah, that can definitely be an issue.
So basically the AC was running for no reason, even when people weren't there. That was kind of my property manager's call. When I realized our AC bill was so high, I asked her to turn it off completely when people are gone. And as we can see, it's gone down to $500.
Yeah, so much more work to do that manually, and it's so much less efficient because like the property manager is clearly not doing a great job of it because it's still like $500-600 a month for your cooling bill. So yeah, I would say like get a smart thermostat. The best thing you can do here, it's going to be a couple $100 and it's going to mitigate so much of this expense because you can really crank it off when it's wet. Like you can completely turn it off when guests aren't there, and you can keep it reasonable while the guests are there and control it remotely. So your property manager doesn't have to bill you for their time or whatever to go by there and turn it off. Way easier.
I don't even want to know what the electricity bill would be if the house was fully booked. Like it would probably be like $2,500. The water bill,
No, I mean realistically it wouldn't because you're not using that much. Again, it's tough to say without looking at the bill, but like I think there's an overestimation of how much more it's going to end up costing if it's fully booked. So I think yeah, you can be a bit more conservative with it there.
Usually hovers at the same $70 to $100. Gas is pretty inexpensive in the summer at like $10. The pool cleaning is $170 per month. And that $220 one, we had to get new filters. That's why it was a little bit more. And then we also added on pest control in July because we noticed like these very, very small ants. So just to be safe, we now have a pest control company come. I am also just now remembering we also pay for Simply Safe and maybe a few other random subscriptions, so that's probably an extra $100. All right, so for June, the total expenses were $4,300. July was about the same. August and September were even lower at about $3,900, thanks to saving a little on that electricity bill. But you can see on each month, we didn't even break even. We were really at a loss of like about $3,000 for each of these months. When we calculate in the revenue, we really were down $9,479. But our beginning bank balance was $25,000, so we still had $16,000 in the bank, even after being at a loss for all these months, because the high season really is like very profitable. So the ending total at $16,000, it is worse than I expected, I will admit, but it's still not that bad. But we did end up having a couple more expenses that I did want to factor in here, because if you're thinking of doing a short-term rental, these are going to come into play, and that is maintenance and additional property taxes. So our house, because we renovated it, we didn't really have that much maintenance, but there was one thing, and that was replacing the AC unit. It was 30 years old. We should have just done it while we were doing everything else, but we didn't. And come this summer, it wasn't working so well. So we had to pay to get a new one. As you can see, the cost for the unit and to get it installed was $12,967. And then it was another $1,200 to repatch the roof area where they put it in.
That is an expensive AC unit. Holy smokes. Yeah, and I mean that's probably why their electricity bill was so. I assume that they've got an electric AC that's what's running up their electricity bill every month. So that's definitely one of those things that that, and just making sure you have good windows to keep the heater or the cold in. That kind of stuff is going to be a good investment long term. But yeah, that's a tough one when they've had bad months, and that's why you keep a bank balance of like $25,000. You want to keep a maintenance reserve set aside. So that you can have money set aside for those kind of unexpected expenses or anything that happens like that.
So in total, that's a pretty major expense considering we only had $16,000 left in this account. Wasn't expecting it, but also kind of was expecting that. I knew we would have to do that at some point. At least we could use some of our earnings to do this rather than dipping into our own money like we were during the whole renovation. And then another expected but unexpected expense that I just totally forgot about was additional property taxes. So I'm sure you guys know home prices went up significantly in the last couple years. And with that, so did everyone's property taxes. Maybe in some cases people have it locked in, but not in our case. So we actually got a bill recently that we need to pay an extra $4,647. That is a lot. That's a really significant amount that has been added. So not only do we have to kind of back pay, I believe, this $4,000 amount, but also moving forward, our mortgage isn't $3,059 anymore. Now every month we have to pay about $3,400. I know I say mortgage here, but that includes property taxes in that lump amount. So that's something that I just didn't really think about, but is good to know that, property taxes will go up. So that was another $18,850 in expenses. These added expenses were even more than just our actual cost of running it, our mortgage and utilities and everything. So the ending balance was negative $2,821. So obviously, I had to dip into another one of my accounts to cover the costs. I really didn't expect that we were gonna have to do that. Things felt like they were going so well in the spring.
So this is exactly what you really want to avoid. Now, obviously for Shelby, I assume she's making pretty good money on her YouTube channel, which is like her main source of income. So there's not like a huge red flag here for her, because high income, she can afford to drop in and get $3,000 to float it. But the challenge here is that, like, as you grow, if you start to really leverage yourself and you start to buy more properties, or if you lose your job and lose your income, stuff like this is what really ruins people financially. Like, this is what ruined people back in 2008, was that they bought properties they couldn't afford. They weren't planning on carrying the cost of it. And then their income dried up, or things change around, and now they can't afford to carry that property anymore, and so they're forced to sell it. And if they're forced to sell it and the market is down like it was in 2008, that's when they have to declare bankruptcy. Like, they're just done, right? You can't afford to, most people can't afford to stomach that loss of a property value dropping by $100,000 and you needing to sell at $100,000 loss and lock that in. So this is really like this should be a cautionary tale to anyone that's looking at investing in short-term rentals, is you need to plan effectively, and you need to make sure, I don't know how the entire year is going to shape up, but you never want to buy a property that is at a risk of cash flowing negative on an annualized basis. And you certainly don't want to be taking on unexpected losses where you have to dip into your own savings, because that's a really dangerous path where if that gets out of control, then you can't afford to do it. You've got to sell the property, and that's how people end up in really hot water.
But this is the risk that you take with Airbnb,
No, it's not. It is not the risk that you take with Airbnb. It is the risk that you take with Airbnb when you don't do your own due diligence. I'm not trying to be mean here, but if you actually do proper due diligence, analyze your deals properly, and educate yourself properly about the deal, about everything else, then going into a deal like this, and it's not a risk you need to take. There are risks associated with Airbnb investing, but I mean, you can mitigate almost all of them by just buying the right property, buying the right deal, looking at the downside potential, analyzing it, making sure it's something you can stomach. Because so many people just look at only the best case scenario or a good scenario, and they don't actually think to look at the worst case scenario and actually consider all the different elements, like, not considering the maintenance for having to replace the 30-year-old air conditioner. That's something that, in hindsight, we can look at and we can say, obviously you would need to replace a 30-year-old air conditioner. But if you actually just, go and do your research and everything else beforehand, then you can know those things going into it. You don't have to experience it. You don't have to learn it by experiencing the pain. So I would not agree this is a risk you have to take. It is a risk that you take if you're not doing it the right way. Guys, just want to take a quick break here to say that for those of you watching who want to build cash flow and long-term wealth by purchasing Airbnbs and short-term rental properties, there's a link in the description right down below for a free training that'll walk you through my exact strategy for investing successfully in Airbnbs. Now, if you're not ready to actually buy properties and you want to get started managing other people's properties on Airbnb the same way I got started, and build a full-time income managing other people's properties, there's actually another free training linked in the description down below as well that'll be a really great fit for you. So whether you want to invest in short-term rental properties and actually build amazing cash flow and long-term wealth by acquiring the assets, buying the properties themselves, or you're looking to earn a full-time income managing other people's properties on Airbnb, we've got some awesome trainings that are linked in the description down below that'll definitely help you out. When you sign up for the trainings, we're also going to send you a few other tools and resources completely for free just to help you get started. Again, the links to sign up are in the description down below, and both trainings and all the tools are completely free. So make sure to register for the trainings, links in the description down below.
On the plus side, we've at least been able to pay the mortgage and also pay for a new AC unit with our earnings. About $10,000 per year of the mortgage goes towards the principal payment, so that's $10,000 in equity we have added in the house. And I've learned a few things we can change in order to do better next summer. The first thing being, I really want to get solar panels. The electricity bill is really our second biggest expense, and with solar panels, you can get that down to pretty much nothing. Of course, it's a hefty initial investment. I believe it's between $20,000 to $30,000, but there's a really great tax credit available right now, and our electricity bill is just so high every month that it would really be worth it for us.
So while it normally is a low season in Palm Springs in the summer, from what I've gathered, this year was an especially record low in terms of short-term rentals. From what I heard, pretty much everyone probably had a similar experience to mine. I'm really glad I didn't spend any of the money that we made in the springtime.
So I will say, this is a common thing I see people do as well, is when their property performs well, they kind of do the mental gymnastics to justify it and go, well, the property will probably appreciate, and I paid down the principal on the mortgage to the tune of about $10,000, so I built some equity, and I learned, and I'm going to do this differently, and that's good. I think you should do that. I think you should learn from your mistakes, but also I think it merits pointing out here that $10,000 in equity, that's subjective. That's really it's only, you only get to realize that when you either sell the property or refinancing it. So you don't actually have access to that capital, and it depends on what the property is worth when you refinance it or sell it. So if the property has dropped in value, like it likely has over the last year, then you don't really have that equity there. It's not like you could ever actually access it. So it's not really something to fall back on. Cash flow is really where you make your money with Airbnbs and short-term rentals. That's where you want to be focusing on. And if you drop the ball there, then you've kind of dropped the ball on the whole investment. So I wouldn't say that it's a salvageable investment at this point. It's just tough, right? If you make the wrong decision when you buy, it's really an uphill battle to make that investment make sense. If you buy the right property, a trained monkey can make that thing profitable. But if you buy the wrong property in the beginning, then it's really an uphill battle and really challenging to salvage it. So that's tough. I think the solar panels are probably a good idea if that's really what's causing a big part of the cost, but also the revenue. I would say that another thing to focus on would be optimizing your revenue, because the reality is that the people she's probably talking to who are commiserating with her saying, oh yeah, we've all done this, it's those are the people that aren't performing well. But the reality is, in any market, there's still demand. It's just that the lion's share of the demand, I talk about this in other videos, the lion's share of the demand goes to the top 10, 15, 20% of hosts in that area. And then everyone else is left kind of grabbing at the scraps of the bookings. And so if she did some things to optimize the listing, optimize her pricing, just optimize it better, she'd probably be able to get a lot more revenue. And realistically, if she's booking this place at $400 or $500 a night, then what would be a bigger advantage, right? Getting a couple more nights booked or reducing that electricity bill that's $800 a month, right? So you're probably better off putting your energy into trying to get more bookings and optimize your strategies. I don't know if she's listed on other platforms like VRBO, these other platforms aside from just Airbnb. I don't know what the overall strategy is there, but I'm sure there's room for improvement there. And to me, that's a way higher leverage thing to focus on that is not going to cost additional money versus going and spending $20,000 to install solar panels so you can reduce your $800 a month in some months of the year electricity bill. So
because it really saved me in the summer in covering almost all the costs. Okay, I wanted to pop back in here while I'm editing this to talk about why I think this low season was so low. One, we are in more of a recession, or at least there are fears of more of a recession. Interest rates are higher. People are obviously not spending as much money on travel. And I wouldn't be shocked if that continues. So I do think that plays a part in this. Two, airline prices are still pretty high. For me to fly to Palm Springs right now, if I wanted to go last minute, would be $800 from Seattle. I think airline prices might have something to do with it, because a lot of our bookings were people flying in from New York and Chicago, cold places. And three, I might have mentioned this, but it is just so hot in Palm Springs in the summer that people really don't want to go. I thought they'd go a little more than 1 or 2 bookings though. I think we just needed to lower our price more, because even if we got our energy costs lower, we still have a certain amount that we need to make in bookings to cover all of these costs. So all in all, it was a slow summer, and it's still been a pretty slow fall for myself and
Yeah, I gotta jump in here again and say, like, the recession, it really just means, yes, there is less overall spending going in, so you have to have a more adaptive pricing strategy. So that's one thing. You can't just do the set it and forget it pricing like they've done here. The other thing is that, again, you just need to be one of those top 10, 20% of listings, because they're the ones that are getting all the demand. If there's less demand than there is supply, it doesn't mean that everyone right across the board experiences a significant and equal drop in overall bookings. It means that the people in the bottom part of the market, the bottom 80%, they see a massive drop, and the people in the top 20%, they see a small drop. So the recession would be a contributing factor, but not in the way that she's pointing to there. You can definitely do a lot better than what she's done here by just optimizing your pricing, optimizing your listing, those sorts of things. The other thing to think about is that, like, we have a similar issue. Like, I invest primarily in Ontario, Canada, and in the winter, it's awful. Like, it's snowy, it's awful. Like, there's not really a lot to do. It's like, there's just not a lot going on that would draw people here because it's just like snowy and dark and kind of gloomy. And so why do people come there? Well, we have to add amenities that give people a reason to come there. So for example, in all of our properties, we have a hot tub and a sauna, and we have snowshoes and all kinds of things to do. So I would say, like, if this were my property, I would have looked for a property in Palm Springs that was near an attraction that would keep people coming there even in the low season. So I just bought a property that's right near a ski hill. So that gives people a reason to come by there in the wintertime when it's low season. The other thing is, like, look to add amenities. That's something that you can easily do right now. Would be to just look for amenities that you could add that would draw more people in. So it really depends. Like, you just have to understand your ideal guest and why they're booking with you, and try to think and put yourself in their shoes to think what would make them want to book this property. And if you can do that effectively, then you can add some cool amenities that usually aren't very expensive that will get more people booking in those low seasons as well.
And for other Palm Springs vacation rentals. I do think it'll pick up in the winter and the spring, but I don't know if it will be as good as last year because it just seems like people aren't spending as much money on travel. And that's totally fair. So even though it was a rough summer season,
and again, that's something that you need to take account of because we knew going through 2020 and 2021 that wasn't going to become the norm. So if you've seen any other videos on the channel where I do property analysis, I like to look back at 2018 and 2019 to see how things went then, because what most areas are experiencing is that, yeah, they in 2018 and 2019 they did well, huge spike in 2020 and 2021, and then it drops back down to right around where it was in 2019 or a little bit better than that in 2022 here. And what people think is that it's like really, really bad and there's no way we could have predicted this. And it's like, well, no, it's not really, really bad. We could have predicted this. We could have just seen, okay, it was an anomaly year for a couple of years there with everything going on in the world. And now we're just going back to normal. So it's not this like unpredictable, we never could have seen it coming. You absolutely could have if you just do the right analysis. And you don't want to be banking on it doing as well as 2020 and 2021. And that's unfortunately what a lot of people did when they were making decisions on what properties to buy, was banking on the good times never ending.
Season, I still don't regret doing an Airbnb in Palm Springs because personally, I love going to it. And it was really fun, the whole process of turning it into an Airbnb and everything. For me, it's really not just about making money, but it's actually a place myself, family, and friends all go to and enjoy. So honestly, even if it just breaks even, that's kind of fine with me because I still love this house. I actually love being an Airbnb host. And I think this is just a temporary low season. You know, at the end of 5 years, I'm sure things will even out.
So I hope you guys appreciate.
Yeah, so I mean, that's honestly, that's a really good place to end it, is that is one of the big, huge advantages of owning a short-term rental, is it is a lot of fun to do, and it's really cool to own these properties that you can go to and hang out at. Now, I will say it is much better to own properties that you can go to and hang out at that also make you a bunch of money. Who wouldn't want to make money? If you have the option to, and you can enjoy the property either way, of course you'd want to make a bunch more money. We've got a property that I plan on spending a whole bunch of time at this year. I enjoy it. I've already been up a few times, and it's going to make me $50,000, $60,000 net this year. That's awesome, right? Because I still get to enjoy it, still get to go hang out at it. It's a really cool property. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun. This is a learning curve. I really appreciate, honestly, and I commend Shelby for putting this video out there, because I think a lot of people are in the same boat as Shelby here and just aren't talking about it. There's definitely a lot of people I've spoken with that are losing money on their Airbnbs, that made the wrong investments. And I think it's really amazing that she took the time to put this video together and be really transparent and candid about everything going on, and then do a breakdown as to why. So I think that's really great. Overall, this is a really good video, and I wish Shelby nothing but the best with this property. And I think she's doing more projects as well, so I hope those go incredibly well also. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, stay up to date with more videos. We release 2 every single week on the channel. Shelby, if you're watching, I hope you enjoy this. I hope you got some value from it. I hope you take some of these tips. Feel free to let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. And otherwise, have an awesome rest of your day.